Oh, we're live. Good evening. Hello, I'm Antony Dunford. I'm the author of a novel called Hunted. It's my first novel. And I'm here talking with Wendy Turbin, who's also got a debut novel out about 2 weeks before me. I'll tell you a bit about my novel first, and then I'll ask Wendy to tell you the same about hers. And then we're going to talk to each other with some questions that we prepared, and we'll answer any other questions that come up in the chat as we go. Hunted is a relatively contemporary novel set in Kenya, mostly in Africa, and it's about poaching and about the last northern white rhinos on the planet, which is true. There are only 2 left. The story itself is fictional, but it is inspired by and based on real events and real conservation issues. And the protagonist is a woman called Jane Haven, or Jannica Haven, and she is Norwegian and has formerly been part of the Jägertropen, which is the world's first all-female special forces troop. But she retired 3 years before the start of the events of the story and went to guard one of the rhinos in her brother's conservancy in Bandari, it's called, which is loosely based on Pejeta, which is a real conservancy in Kenya near Nanyuki. And that's the setting. After that, the events unfold, and Jane has reasons to get a little bit angry, and she's not the sort of person you want to piss off. And then it goes. Hopefully, it keeps you turning the pages. Some people have been very nice and said that it does. And now working on the sequel to that, which we'll tell you a little bit more about later. So if I can now hand over to Wendy, and we'll explain how we know each other later on as well. And if she could tell you a little bit about her novel and herself.
I will do that. Yes, I see someone's, Sam's got in with an early question. We'll come to questions later, but keep putting them on, Hi, I'm Wendy Turbin. I'm the author of a book called Sleeping Dogs, which is my cover there. It is totally unlike Antony's book. It couldn't be more chalk and cheese, I think. Mine is set in small town seaside on the Essex coast. And that is very loosely based on Clacton-on-Sea, my fictional town of Haston. And it couldn't be further from Kenya, really. My protagonist is a private detective. And when the book opens, she has just inherited a private detective agency from her father. She is not the best detective in the world, but she does have a little assistance, or perhaps not very much assistance, depending on your point of view, from the fact she sees ghosts. So sometimes she is compelled to solve their mysteries along with the mysteries of the actual novel. It has been very kindly referred to as a cozy crime with a dark heart, which as a description I love, because it does have a bit of humour. It is quite light-hearted in places, but underneath it all, there is quite a dark thread that runs through it. And we probably will talk a bit more about that later. So it's sort of a bit of a mix. It's for people who like cozies, but also like a little bit of dark emotion. It's not in the least gory. I should just mention that in case you get the idea that it's gory. It's not. It's very cozy in that world. Nobody swears. It's all very nice. So that is my debut novel, and like Antony, I am working on my second, which you can see from this sheet of paper behind me. If it falls down, underneath it is pretty much the entire plot and in planning stage of the second one. So I'm hoping very much that sheet of paper doesn't fall down. If it does, I shall switch my camera off very quickly. So shall I pick a question, Antony? Because we've got some coming in. Oh, hello, Lucy. I'll just say hello, Lucy. Oh, hello, TG. Yes.
Hello. I will throw that up there just because you remembered and I didn't. Just to say that cover available on Amazon. And Samantha's asked us a question that says, how did we know each other? Which I said we'd get to. So shall I start and then you can
go for it.
Throw in the embarrassing sides of the story. Wendy and I were both part of 12 people who did an MA in crime fiction at the University of East Anglia in Norwich, starting in 2017. And we affectionately know each other as Crime Gang 17 for obvious reasons. And that course was a 2-year part-time master's course, where it was mostly remote learning, but we went to Norwich 3 times each year for tutorials and seminars and master classes with some fantastic crime writers, folk like Mick Herron and Nicola Upson, and so there was 6 of them in total. And because it was a once-a-term residential, we'd all pile up and mostly stay in the same hotel in Norwich, and there were involved pubs after lectures and masterclasses had finished, occasional drink, and more often than not, at the end of an evening, Wendy and I would be the last 2 sitting in the bar of the Nelson Hotel in Norwich, drinking a glass of red wine and setting the world to rights and going, I can't do this, writing's too hard, they're all so much better than me. Anything to throw into that? Or is that okay?
Yes, I'm just going to jump in and say that actually the private detective fiction has always been a bit of a love of mine, and it was only after I had started on a complete different novel, which actually also had a ghost, but it was a different novel. And I think it must have been the second residential, so the January residential, and I had been critiqued that day in class, which is never a nice experience. I have to be honest. I don't think anybody ever honestly says, oh, I enjoyed being ripped to shreds, it was lovely. But it's a very necessary part of building up a better novel. If it doesn't get knocked down, you can't improve it. So it's a process you have to go through. But that did, in consequence, mean that, you know, we fled to pubs to drink red wine, with smarting somewhat. And that was my day, I think my worst day, and I was smarting dreadfully. And Antony and I think, were the last 2, as he said, in the bar that night. And I was, you know, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. My story's not working. My plot's not working. I don't even like my character. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? I should never be on this course. And Antony said, well, what crime fiction do you really like? And I went, oh, private eye fiction, and went off into a little, you know, rant about how good it all is. And he said, well, why don't you write that then? Just saying. Thank you, Antony, for that little thought. And I still remembered it the next morning when I woke up going, oh, how was that? 3 more glasses of wine? And we limped into the masterclass looking pale and interesting along with the rest of our cohort, because it was a tradition. And
there's of the 12 of us, some finished the novel that they brought with them to the course. They had a clear idea from the start, and they developed it and ended up with a better version of the same story. And some of us came up with an idea and ended up with something completely different. And some of us had no idea at all and went through about 15 different ones as they went along. And I was one of those, because I think at that same January I was still on a locked room murder mystery set in a pub in Baildon in Yorkshire.
You were.
Later moved into a futuristic sort of post-apocalyptic private eye thing set in Hertfordshire somewhere, and eventually it ended up in Africa through mysteries that I think it was actually Henry Sutton, the course director, who was responsible for the main shift. So yes, it was yeah, you couldn't have predicted it.
No, completely unpredictable. Yeah, I do think that's one of the really great things about doing a writing course. And I'm not really talking about the level that you're at, or how much you paid for it, or how long it takes, but the mere fact of being with people who write, be they the creative writing tutors that we had who were brilliant, or the masterclasses from the working authors, or the other people on the course who were a year above us and our year, who were just starting out. I mean, that was the most amazing thing, that you were actually in an environment where you could change an idea that you had. You could swing it in any direction and explore it. And that first year was about exploring what you want to do. And it really was quite an experience, wasn't it? It was quite bonding as well, not just because of the wine in the bar, but actually because you were bearing your soul a little bit. But I think in any writing course, the feedback you get, the ideas that are stimulated, and those wide-ranging discussions you have with other people are actually the best part of the whole thing. And that includes the tutors that are coming in for those discussions as well, because, you know, sometimes, are they allowed to say this? Sometimes they came to the pub, not for long and only for one drink, honest. But we did have some conversations there too.
Absolutely, and the bonding side of it, we're still friends with everybody from our year, and I'm still working on some of their novels and reading their things, and they're reading mine, and with people from the year above and below. It's a real, I mean, there's Facebook groups that cover every cohort except the first one. And if you've got a question, whoever you are, you stick it up and you say, "Oh, I'd like someone to help read this, or give me a view." And
Yeah.
oh, sorry, I just saw a question with Henry.
There are lots of questions coming in. If we look slightly distracted, this is because we're not very used to this yet. We're still practicing.
I remember one of our cohort fellow in the same year as us, Louise Mangos, who's just having a third or fourth novel published. I can't remember which one. But she said when she first got into crime fiction and first started going to crime fiction festivals, she said she found her tribe because everyone was so lovely, the writers, the readers. It was just such a supportive group, and
yeah,
she's absolutely right.
Yeah, and I think you can actually see that on some of the Facebook groups like this one that we're on now. It's not just about reading the book. You know, it's about recommending books you like. It's about telling people about the characters that you've fallen in love with. It's about, you know, looking at what other writers are doing and how exciting it is, and the whole kind of thing just comes alive. And it does very much feel like a tribe. I think as far as this particular group's concerned, it's more a nation because there's quite a lot of people on this group. But it's just fabulous because people who are very engaged in writing in the crime genre, they're very knowledgeable and they know what it is that you're trying to do. I just do want to say thank you, TG, for raising the glass of red wine.
I have wine.
Very much appreciated. I feel that I might be let inside down a bit because I haven't got wine. I need to drink that way. But I have got a wonderful, wonderful mug that I was given, which has not only an assortment of cats, but a rather fabulous basset hound on there. And there is a basset hound featured in my book. So somebody went to the trouble of finding that, which was just really lovely of them.
Shall we
have a couple of...
I was just going to say, if we move on and start talking about the books in a bit more depth, but there is a question there from Andrew in Nottingham saying, do we know Henry Sutton? And yes, Henry is the course director. Without Henry, Wendy and I wouldn't know each other because he established the UEA crime fiction course in 2015. We were the third cohort. Henry writes under the pseudonym of Harry Brett as well as Henry Sutton. And we know him. He was my tutor for my novel. And I can send him occasional notes just to remind him that at the moment of the first 3 cohorts that have gone through his course, 40% of the writers are now published, which is a great stat, and it's up there with the UEA overall achievements. So, yeah.
That is amazing, and you know, all credit to Henry for establishing that course and just, you know, encouraging all these writers who kind of, you know, we like to think, although we didn't believe it, we never believed that we're any good, but we sort of thought we might have something. And when we got on the course, the very first, I will just stop and tell you this little story, because the very first meeting we had, I think, I'm trying to remember, was it Tom Ben, wonderful Tom Ben, who came in to do something, and he said, write a couple of paragraphs in the style of a writer you like, and then wanted some of us to read it out. And I nearly died on the spot because I'm not good when I'm put on the spot. So I was just going, I can't remember my own name, let alone any book that I liked or the style of any character. And Antony immediately scribbled away pages and pages and pages in this very short time, and was brave enough to read his out. And do you remember what it was, Antony?
It was in the style of Poirot, wasn't it? It was Agatha Christie.
It was in the style of Poirot, and it was absolutely brilliant. And at that moment, I thought, I can't do this. I want to run away. But fortunately, it got better. And I think Henry's designed such a beautiful course because we all discovered we felt like that on the first session, but it really builds your confidence into thinking that you can do this and you can get better at this, and you can learn a lot of the sort of techniques that are used. And that's not an easy thing. It's learning the craft, and you have to do it, I think, unless you are supremely talented and just can conjure it out of nothing. But every writer I know has had to really work hard at the craft before they can produce something which is publishable. And for 40% of the course to have achieved that. And that's not the end, because some of them have just taken time to go and write something else or rewrite what they're writing, and they haven't tried that hard to get published yet.
And
I think that is amazing.
COVID's had a big impact on the traditional publishing industry because all the bookshops have been shut. So there's been much less being published over the last 12 months than usual. And we've got several friends who have agents already but haven't actually got a publishing deal yet, because the mechanisms to get published traditionally are choked, or have been choked for a large proportion of the last sort of 12, 18 months.
Yeah, it's been difficult, definitely.
Should we dive into the novels in a bit more detail then? I mean, you started there with a basset. There's lots of pets and ghost pets and things in Sleeping Dogs, which the title attests to. I mean, I'll start with the ghosts, because that was interesting, and we'll come on to my favourite ghost, which isn't anymore, a little bit later. But what was it attracted to you, ghosts, and how did you settle on how they appear? Because I think, in my experience, ghosts are like magic in novels. You have to be very careful to make sure it's not all powerful and can't be just whipped out to change everything. So you have to constrain the fantasy world that you create, that these things operate in. And the way you've done it in Sleeping Dogs, which you established very early on in the book, so hopefully there's no spoilers.
I don't think that's a spoiler.
Is that Penny can see ghosts, and they can see her and interact with her, but only in a very limited way. They can't talk to her, they can touch her and make her feel cold, and they can bother her and make her realise that she's got to do something to make them happy, or else they're not going to leave her alone. But that's about it, and it works really well, I think, certainly. How did you come up with that, and what was going through your mind as you were deciding how to constrain the ghosts in such a way?
Well, once the ghosts had decided to make an appearance in the novel, which was not a given from the beginning, but they just kept turning up and doing things. I did have to think quite carefully, and I did have quite a lot of discussions with different people about how much agency they could have, how much they could actually impact things to do with the plot. Because, as you say, this idea of magic being rather dangerous is that I've been in this position, and I won't name any names, but I've been in this position of reading a book where something magical happens, and actually without that the book wouldn't stand. And it's quite difficult in a crime novel, which is essentially a mystery. I did want my detective to solve the mystery, not be given the answer by the ghosts. So although they appear, and I do have a bit of a thing about the human ghosts. I treat very seriously, because that, somebody's died and there's a reason that they appear. The animal ghosts, I always think most animals don't, as far as I'm aware, have that sort of idea of mortality that humanity has, and therefore when they die, I don't think they know they die, so they just carry on doing the things that they did in life, and they carry on doing whatever it is, which makes them quite charming. And sometimes my detective's in a situation of looking at them and thinking, am I just seeing a loop of what happened in life, or does this action have a point to it? And I like to leave it open, because I think if she was certain of the meaning of what was going on with the ghosts, it would not be a good story. I think, I can't give her too much help, if you like.
Yeah.
When it comes to the human element in the ghosts, it's slightly different, because the human ghosts have well, do they have agency? There is a sort of suspicion that they can, in a very small way, affect things, as you say, a very small way. And I don't want to give away any bits of the plot either, but they can sort of influence the world. If you think about Patrick Swayze in Ghost in the film, he spent a long time learning to move a paperclip or a coin, wasn't it, up a door and down again. And then he rapidly got very good at it all. And I don't think the rapidly bit would happen. I think it would always stay very, very little things that they could do. And I couldn't have them speak or communicate directly, because it would, if somebody has died potentially at the hands of another, to have them ship up and say, well, she did it, would be a bit of a giveaway.
Very short novel.
So I have to be careful about that. But also, I think as a reader, I want to be intrigued. And I want at the end to think, that's why. That's what it was about. And I want that feeling. I want my readers to have that feeling. But I don't want them to feel cheated. I don't want them to think, well, that's easy if somebody's whispering in your ear what's going on. So my detective Penny, she does have to work at it, but she does with the human ghosts. She has a certain sort of empathy, psychic empathy, if you like. So she can feel, I think there's a sort of wash of emotion that she sometimes tunes into. But of course, trying to determine what that emotion is, that's her judgment call. So it's not as simple. If you can imagine getting a wash of emotion from anybody, you can't always tell whether somebody is overwhelmed with anger or sorrow or even happiness. Those things can manifest very much the same in that sort of moment, that tiny moment. So she doesn't get that much help, but she does get, I suppose she just gets focused. That was my purpose, was having her focused in wanting and needing to find out what has happened, why this ghost is there, and satisfying whatever it is that they need to be released. And I do see it as being, released into an afterlife of some kind. Whereas the animals, I think she sees them and they do things and they're quite fun. And when she's not looking, they probably just go on doing those things. But she might pick up a clue or two.
Well, yeah. So the animals are quite fun. The novel itself is, as you said, it does have a very dark heart, but it is very funny. And when we were doing our dissertations, and the structure of the course we did was the first year with that's where all the academic study is done, and the second year you write a novel and you submit that as a dissertation. So when we're getting ready to the submission point for that, we're all volunteering to buddy up and read each other's novels and say, hey, does this work? Help, all that sort of stuff. And I remember reading Wendy sitting at the kitchen table in the room behind me, and my other half was sitting at the other end of the table working, or she was studying, I think, at the time. And I just kept bursting out laughing. There were just repeated laugh out loud moments, and I had to read out the paragraph that had made me laugh so much. And the way you've actually got this balance between the animals and the human ghosts, but also the darkness and the humour that works and never seems to contradict the darkness. That was superb. I'm not going to
stop. You're making me blush.
Little images, but the Cadbury's cream egg wrapper. Read it.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I did. I mean, humour is I think quite a difficult thing to do, but Penny has, I think, a little bit of my sense of the absurd. So she observes things, and it, things that make me laugh, I tend to put in, but that doesn't mean to say, and I'm sure Antony will also admit, that some of them don't come out that funny in the first draft. You have to, and again, it's a craft. You have to craft the timing, and I do remember in my second year when I was trying to put that together, there were bits that were sort of funny but not funny enough, and it wasn't about what happened, it was about the way you tell them. It's the old thing with jokes, isn't it? And when you're telling a joke, if you like, to an audience that you can't see and that can't see you, all you've got is the written word. It's really hard to get it right. So what I had to do was do the best I could with it and give it to people some who knew me and some who didn't know me so well, and say, is that funny? Does it make you laugh? Or are you just kind of going, oh no, that's silly? Because a lot of it is quite silly humour, and I deliberately wanted that to offset the sadness and the kind of drama of some of the other parts of the novel, because I think that light and shade is I mean, you do the same thing in Hunted. You have incidents, you have a character that just made me laugh so much. The observational humour that character has, it is wonderful. So I'm gonna switch the focus now, because I'm going to switch you. And thank you for your questions. I will answer some of them, but I want Antony to expand a little, because this is a wonderful writer who's written a wonderful novel about a very strong and determined female what is she? Soldier. I mean, in a way, she is. You know, she is incredibly strong physically and mentally, and she's had training to really stand up in a very masculine world. And I would like to know, one, where did you get the idea from her? And secondly, why did you decide on a female protagonist for your novel? Because most of these things tend to feature men, and it was very, very nice to find Jane Haven. I like her very much.
I can't quite remember. I remember there was a point when I was writing the earlier version of Hunted, when it was actually called The Slow Knife, where I picked a female protagonist, and that was just, I just knew it had to be. And everything else, I worked backwards from there. I wanted her to be very dangerous, but I wanted to be realistically very dangerous. So I did research on where are women most likely to have access to training that makes them very dangerous. And I was a little bit inspired by The Bridge, and the main character in that, who's Asperger's syndrome and has trouble with understanding emotions and with empathy. And Jane isn't like that, but she's capable of parking her emotions completely and focusing exclusively on the pragmatic moment. And then I just by chance came across an article in the BBC that was an interview with two members of the Turbin, which I learned from the article that this was the first all-female special forces unit in the world. It was attached to the Norwegian army, and there was a photograph of two women, both of whom were wearing masks, but one of them you saw from the back, and she had long red hair, and she became Walker in the novel. And the other one had sort of mousy blonde hair and was looking at you, and you could just see her eyes, and she became Jane. That's who I imagine when I see Jane. And the rest of it unfolded from there. There's not a clear journey to how she came to be the centre of.
She emerged. Yeah. Did you find it hard to write, such a main character in a female point of view?
I know there are many pitfalls. I see on Twitter there's lots of people complain about men writing women particularly, and doing it in a way where they don't necessarily seem to be writing women, they seem to be writing a man looking at a woman. I tried to, and it's not just writing Jane. Jane is Norwegian, her brother is Norwegian, her brother's wife is Kenyan, and the other two main male characters are Kenyan. The other main female character is also Norwegian, and most of the bad guys are Americans and South Africans, and I'm none of these things. I'm a male, but I've nothing. So the whole lot was an exercise in creativity, and it was reading and trying to get into the feel of a voice. And I've done possibly slightly extreme, but everybody does this. I mean, every writer, or in the majority, I mean, with possible exception of things like Jeanette Winston's Written on the Body, where there is a protagonist who everyone who's read that novel I've ever met, you say, oh, was the main character female or male? And quite often they haven't thought about it, but then you go back and realize that there is no point in the novel where there is ever a pronoun associated with this character. And everyone I've met who's read that novel, who's male, thought the protagonist was male, and everyone who read it was female thought the protagonist was female. But they have both male and female lovers and all that sort of stuff. But in the main, novels written by men have female characters, and written by women have male characters, and have characters of different nationalities and so on. And you just got it. Either you find the voice and it works, or you don't and it doesn't.
I think that is so interesting, because I have read one or two novels written by men who have female characters, main characters, and vice versa actually, and they don't always work, as you say. Sometimes they're just not convincing, but your characters really are convincing, and that's what kind of made me ask the question, really, because I was sort of wondering whether there was something in your background or family or something that was sort of giving you that more female perspective of you know, what that would mean in the way you saw the world, because although Jane she is quite, as you say, she parks her emotions. She has the ability to distance herself from her own emotions. They're there, but she can just put them to one side, and operate how she needs to operate. But I just wondered if there was something that you know, you felt made it possible for you to do that so convincingly, or whether it's just sheer natural talent, which it is.
A lot of work. I mean, the Y and McKenna, both of those characters are vaguely inspired by people I know, and neither of whom are Kenyan. One's Nigerian, one's from Sierra Leone, but they are who I see and hear and feel when I'm writing them, and that makes it easier. And similarly with Jane and Walker, I can see that photo, so I know who I'm talking about. That sort of helps.
So that helps, yeah.
I'm
going to just go to one or two of the questions because they seem to be stacking up here, and I'm aware of the fact that, and I know, Antony, you were sort of slightly concerned about how long we were going to be on, and that is like half an hour gone already that we've been talking. So I think we should get to some of the audience questions.
3 lines down of our 2 pages of notes, so yeah, we're doing well.
Yeah, we have a lot of backup in case nobody asked us anything at all. So firstly, can I just say, oh, hello, Caroline, nice to see you.
Hello to everyone. Hello.
And I have got, let's have a look. Oh, Leslie Lloyd, I like the sound of the ghosts. Thank you very much. Me too. And someone has asked, are your books available on audio or at the library? Libraries, if you request them, they can order them. We are on all the main sites, so they can certainly order them in ebook or paperback. So if you'd like a copy for your library, please ask your library to order it. We would be delighted, because it is a great way of reaching lots of people who can't afford to buy books. And especially this year, a lot of people are having a lot less money than they thought they would have. And, you know, libraries are a godsend. Now they're open again. So, you know, please do ask. And Sam has very kindly said that she will put up the...
You answered the first half of that question. The second half was, is it available on audio, which you've got?
On audio. Right. Well, I don't think I'm giving anything away. I think the publisher is going to kill me if I say it. Pretend you didn't hear it. Yes, Sleeping Dogs will be coming out in audio. I don't have a date yet, but it has been recorded by our very good friend and also a member of our cohort at the UEA, Judy Dakin, who is a wonderful writer, author in her own right, published by Joffe. So if you like police procedurals, go read Judy's. But she is also an actress. She very kindly agreed to the publisher's request to do the audio for my book, and I am thrilled to pieces that it's coming out in audio. So it will be available. It's not yet, but it will be available. So as soon as I know, I'll be asking, please can I have permission to put it out on the UK Crime Book Club Facebook group to say that it's available. So that's great.
Hunted, there's no audio yet. We've discussed it a couple of times, but we've got to pick the right narrator, which I've made really easy by having 3 points of view, 1 female, that's the majority, and 2 male, 1 South African, 1 Kenyan. So it's going to be somebody who can seamlessly slip between voices.
Almost anyone can do it then, right? that is quite difficult, isn't it? So yeah. Anyway, audio is definitely, you know, where we're going. Our publishers are all in favour, and there is quite a you know, a demand for it. I know lots of people like to listen to audiobooks. Can I just also ask, I'm just scrolling through the questions. I'm not very good at multitasking. Scrolling through, have I actually seen a ghost? Well, now you see, that's a tricky question. I'll come back to that one. Let's have a look. Caroline, would you consider writing together? What do you think, Antony? Should we collaborate? We're very different.
It'd be very entertaining if we did. It would be very funny, I think. It would,
could you see a sort of Terry Pratchett, Neil Gaiman kind of? No.
We could come up with something, I'm pretty sure.
We could try, couldn't we? We do both like a bit of kind of madcap fantasy world stuff, don't we? So, but probably not on a crime novel. I think that would be. Well, I don't think so. But on something completely different, yes, because we do, I think, share a sense of humour. So we might be able to do something one day. It'd certainly be fun to try, but it's like everything. You actually need about 58 hours every day to get through what you have to do already. But maybe one day, over lots of red wine, maybe in Norwich, who knows?
But certainly in terms of exchanging ideas and commenting on each other's work, we've got form.
We do that anyway, yeah, definitely. Do you want to have a look and see if there are any more questions?
Yeah, there's one here from Andrew in Nottingham. This is, your novel is set in Kenya. So did you travel there to get the ideas for it? If so, did a tour guide show you around? I was planning to go to Kenya, and then COVID happened, but no, I've not been. And I've had some very pleasant comments saying, "Oh, how long have you spent there?" This reminds me just how it was when I went there on a safari 10 years ago. I mean, it's come from research in the main, and that has involved lots of YouTube videos and documentaries and things where you can get a sense of the light and the sound and the scenery. There's lots of time spent on Google Earth. I've read a lot of novels. I've done novels that are set in Kenya and been successful to give a feel for it. And from the extremes of, I read one, I'm not going to be able to remember the title of right now, but it's on the bookshelf back at my house, which was written by an Italian who was fought in Eritrea in the 1930s and was captured by the British Army and imprisoned in a massive prison camp in Nanyuki in Kenya from about 1939 through to 1942. And he was about 10,000 Italians, and he would look out of the camp and he'd see Mount Kenya, second highest mountain in Africa, from the camp. And he wasn't a soldier, he didn't want to be there, but he was a mountaineer and he wanted to climb that mountain. So he broke out of the camp with two friends. They climbed Mount Kenya. They didn't make it to the top of the main peak. They went to the second peak, which is slightly lower. They planted the Italian flag. They climbed back down. They broke back into the prison camp, turned up at roll call the following day, and were then told off. But it was...
They were told off. That sounds awfully much. You're very naughty. You shouldn't have gone out.
Yeah, the British camp wasn't as rigorously guarded as others that we might have read about during the Second World War. But it was just a wonderful snapshot of an Italian's view of Kenya and Kenyan wildlife. And it's things like that. I read loads, and I've watched loads, and I've listened to loads, and I've talked to loads of people. I mean, there's at UEA, one of the tutors, G. McNeil, is a safari guide in Kenya part-time. She teaches at UEA 3 terms, and then she spends the summer in Kenya, and she read the first 10,000 of words of one variant of hunted and commented on that and gave me some very useful hints and tips and that sort of thing. But no, I've not been. I would love to go, and it's on my list once we can travel more freely again and I can save up.
It is quite amazing how authentic it is, because when I read it first, or the earlier incarnation of it, I didn't know you hadn't been to that part of the world, and I was totally convinced that it must be, you know, somewhere that you were very familiar with. And you mentioned going on things like Google Earth to have a look and see, you know, what the land actually looked like and sort of get up close to details on it. And I thought that was amazing. And, you know, what a wonderful writer's research tool now for anybody who wants to do this. But I do think it takes a particular talent to create that world so seamlessly from third-party sources, if you like, and not actually physically being there yourself to experience it. Because you have the full sensory experience when you're in Hunted. I mean, everything, and sometimes bits that you might not want to be smelling and seeing, but it's very authentic. So, for someone, I mean, I've never been to that part of the world, but to me, it seemed completely convincing. So good job, very good job.
Thank you.
There's talent. I have to say that I had it easy. I just had to walk down to the pier and have a look, and that was
well. You say I did. There's a one of Jim Knox's book clubs. I can't remember. It was an Australian writer, and she had written a novel, and she was living in Tokyo at the time, and I can't remember the name, and it won't come back to me until afterwards because my memory's terrible. But this novel was set in Tokyo and South Korea and bits of China and Singapore and places. And when it got through her editors saying, this is incredible, except the scenes in Tokyo. You've obviously never been there, but the rest of them you must know really well. And it was the only one she'd actually been to. And Knoxy said, well, why do you think that is? And he said, because when you're writing about somewhere that you haven't been to, you pick out the things that are interesting to you as somebody who hasn't been there. Whereas if you're really familiar with the place, you don't necessarily see those things that are the things that might be most interesting to a reader, which I thought was fascinating. The idea that you actually can't write a place you're really familiar with as well as one that you've never been to. I mean, obviously that's not the case for Naughty Folk, but it was for her for a moment.
That's a really good point, actually, because although I joke about just having to walk down the road and have a look at the pier, I did actually have to go down and look with a writer's eye. Rather than just, you know, stroll down as I would normally and walk along the seafront. I'm sort of fortunate that I'm not very far from it, so I can just go and, you know, have a look around. But actually, there were lots of things that came up when I was writing that I was thinking, oh, you know, is that where I think it is? How high is this, and where exactly is that? And where would the light fall if it was this time of day and this weather conditions? And there were a lot of things that I had to go and kind of, I mean, some of it is fictionalized anyway, I should say, because if anybody's familiar with Platchonsea, they're going to be telling me all sorts of things are in the wrong place and couldn't happen for very good reasons. But that's what fiction is about. But I did have to go and have a really close look at things to do with the water and things that I took for granted. So yeah, I mean, maybe that's a good point, but I certainly didn't have to recreate an entire continent out of my head, which was something that would have scared me, Antony. So well done, you. You never take the easy way, do you? You always like to challenge yourself with these things and succeed, which is great. Let's have a look at another question or two. So we have got, can you tell us about your, we've got one from Lucy about second novels. So we're going to come on to that in a little bit. But we've got another one. Can you tell us about your writing routine? Oh, my writing routine. I wish I had one, really. It goes from playing for an hour a day at writing something to going into manic, I can't go out for a fortnight, I've got to get this bit finished. But like everybody, I have a life outside of writing. There's very few writers, unfortunately, very few authors who can make a living at it. And at the beginning of our careers, I don't think either of us is in that position yet, but please buy the books, you never know. So it's worth a try, isn't it? Shall I hold up one specially? I've lost it now. There we are. I'll hold up one specially.
I mean, the little ones.
The little baby ones, aren't they cute? So cute. Shrunk in the wash. What can you do? So I would love to write every day, and certainly that is always the aim, would be to write part of every day. But I do have to work, and I do have family responsibilities, and that impacts. So what I try and do is I can't do a minimum word count or anything, but I do try, even if I can't physically write anything, I will be thinking about my plot and my characters and what I might want to do with them, and kind of doing some development work in my head when I'm driving or when I'm doing other things. And then I quite often find that first thing in the morning, my brain comes up with some good ideas. So I try and jot those down before the escape. And then at the moment, because I am really trying very hard to get to the end of the second one, I am writing every day and making sure that I create a space to do that. So that would be the ideal. But I don't really have a regular routine. I try for one. That's all I think I can say. What about you, Antony?
I mean, mine, before COVID, I definitely had a good routine. I was working in an office in Stratford, and I would get there very early. I'd leave home just before 6. I'd be in the office for about 7, and then I'd write till about 8:15. So I had an hour and 15 minutes every day of solid writing, and that could be 100 words, it could be 1,500, depends on what mood you're in and what part of the story you're in, that sort of thing. And that worked very well. other part, it depends on which bit of the novel I'm at as to what works, because I wrote Hunted as It Stands, quite a chunk of it in the middle was written at Crime Fest in 2018, which is about 3 days in, was it May that year? I think it was towards the end of May. It was one the year it's out of sync. And I went to the first 2 or 3 panels and just kept getting inspired and thinking, right, I'm going to have to go back and write a bit more. I remember the Saturday I wrote over 9,000 words. And this is only an 87,000 word novel, most of which are still in there. And it was just the right day, the right time. And that's very rare for me. I mean, on a good day, it's usually 1,500 would be a woohoo. But so I think I've done all types. I do the when I do have a regular work routine, I can write around it, and I was lucky enough to have a work routine that allowed that. But when I don't have a regular routine, it's big binges. It can be suddenly a quarter of a novel in a weekend and then nothing for a week. And I've used the NaNoWriMo discipline before, which is the National Novel Writers Month, 50,000 words in November, and the first draft of the sequel to Hunted, which is called Endangered, I wrote in, I think it was 2019 November, most of it in November. I think I started in October, but set myself a challenge to get a first draft down, and it was just, as NaNoWriMo is, it was about quantity rather than quality. It was about getting to the end of the story and then worry about fixing it all later. And 2 years later, I'm still fixing it, but it's.
Some bits are quicker than others, as you say. You can suddenly gallop through a scene and it just works, and other scenes you can rework them for a year and you're still going, it's not quite right, it still needs something else. So yeah, it can be very tricky, can't it?
And
but,
from what we've seen of our other fellow writers, everyone's routine is different, and everyone has different boundaries to it. I'm quite happy to cut something. For example, the 4th draft of Endangered, which I'm just working on at the moment, I had a point of view in it that is brilliant. I'm going to use it in something, but it wasn't right for this. So it's all gone.
The whole point of view.
I think I had a chunk that was 15,000 words. It became 7,000 words about 4 days ago, and is now back to 15,000, but the other 8,000 are very different.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah.
Excellent. I think there's somebody has now I can't find the question, of course, but somebody has asked us, what about are we writing second novels, and how difficult is it? What advice from your course has helped keep you on track? So you've just mentioned writing Endangered, which I think I've seen one early draft of some time ago, so I'll be interested to see what you've done with it since that time, but I'm not allowed to read anything until I finish the first draft of mine, which is galloping forward. And I think this is quite interesting, because when I wrote the first one, I mean, Antony works very differently to me, and I think I'm right in saying, Antony, you're much more focused than I am. You have a very clear idea of your story, and it's all about how you tell it. Well, you've been fairly convincing on this. So it's all lies. Okay, my mistake. But I'm very much, I'm not a planner. So what I have to do is I have to sort of write the novel to find out what it's about, and then what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then half of it has to be cut out, and then I write it again and see what I've got. So I start with an idea and then move forward. And I thought that when I'd finished the first one and was very fortunate to be offered a publishing deal with Hobeck Books, and it was actually coming out into the real world, and it was all tremendously exciting, and it was wonderful. And then they said, well, it's a series novel, when's the next one? Oh yes, mustn't forget that, have to write another one. And I had some ideas, and I started writing, and I thought I'd be able to plan it. I thought, this time I'm going to get it right, I'm going to do it the proper way, I'm going to plan it. No chance. I'm in exactly the same position as I was with the first one, which is I've got a story, I've got some subplots, I've got way too many characters, way too many subplots, all sorts of things going mad. So I've got nearly to the end. I know the ending, but I've got nearly to the end in my draft. But before I can complete the ending, I have to go and untangle lots of skeins of storyline that I no longer want, and pull them out and get rid of them, and then kind of plaster over all the bits, the holes that have been left, and join up all the bits that are left. and then see, oh, actually, I need that scene and I haven't written that. So lots of little notes saying, oh, write in where this happens and whose point of view it should be in. And I'm actually, the first one was just 2 points of view. This one, my draft at least is 3 points of view. So we have a point of view that I'm not very well equipped to write. So I'm playing with it. It might stay, it might go. We'll see. It has some fun elements, so I think you might like it, Antony. But we'll see. So it's sort of very different in that it's a different story, but it's very much the same. As in, I'm a bit of a muddle through and see what happens. But I'm getting there, and it is a series, and the next one is actually cooking in the back of my mind as I'm doing this one. So I hope to speed up. But like everything, it's a question of the time you can spend on it. How about you then, Antony? You were talking about Endangered. Is it nearly ready to go?
I'm just looking at a couple of other questions which are relevant. So there's one: what did you do before writing? Well, we're still doing it. And do you plan to set future novels in Kenya? Yes. So the idea I had for Hunted was it would be first of a trilogy: Hunted, Endangered, and Extinct. Endangered, I had a full draft. I'm now on just starting my 4th draft, so I've done 2 of the full ones since the first. I did start writing for our publishers, Hobeck, a novella that was going to be issued on the website as one of the freebies when you sign up for newsletter. But it grew arms and legs and heads and torsos and feet and wings. And that will be a novel in itself as well. And that's set 3 years before Hunted in Democratic Republic of the Congo. And I really quite like that one, so I'm looking forward to getting back to it once I finish Endangered.
Does that feature any of your characters, your Hunted characters? Yes,
it's Jane, Jomo, and Kenneth. So
it's a sort of prequel to it.
Yeah, it is a prequel. It's Jane's first time in Africa. And then there is, whilst writing Endangered, I realised there are some things I need to know for backstory about what happened to the characters after Hunted, but before Endangered starts. And that bit of backstory I scribbled down a bit, and that's now almost a complete novel as well. So I've got to come up with a title for that, but that's quite different to the others because it's a lot more Maya and Jane, and at the moment it's too funny. It needs to be less funny. But I've very much enjoyed writing that too. And so there's going to be, at the current rate, there's going to be at least 4 I will write will be set in Kenya. Whether or not they will get published will be a different matter. It depends on whether publishers like them.
Wow.
I did see an earlier question about how come we're both published by Hobeck, which is, we mentioned the lady who is doing the audiobook of Wendy's novel, Judy Dakin, who's got 2 novels of her own, Under Violent Skies and Into Deadly Storms, and the 3rd one's just gone off to the publisher. She had already got a publishing deal with Joffy and saw online somewhere that this new publisher, Hobeck, were looking for submissions. And she stuck that in our UEA little Loitering with Criminal Intent group, and I was looking to submit things at a time, so I pinged mine over, and about 48 hours later I got a note back from Rebecca, who is one of the 2 people who are Hobeck, saying, oh, we quite like it, can we have a chat? And they went, yeah, let's do it. And Wendy, once I'd done that, passed over details to Wendy, she did the same thing, and they did the same thing with her. So, and there's now a 3rd member of the UEA cohorts who's been announced as a Hobeck author too, so they're lapping us up at the moment, which is very nice.
Yes, we're planning to take over the world.
Oh, we've lost Wendy. Oh no. Hopefully she'll rejoin. I know we've got 5 of us. Are you coming back?
Hello, I'll just step in for a moment.
I was just going to say, Sam, that I see there's a question saying, I see William Ryan has done the Blurb for Sleeping Dogs. William Bill was one of our tutors at UEA for the first year. He took our creative writing course. So yeah, we were taught by him for a year. And,
excellent. Hopefully Wendy will come back and join us, which would be rather lovely. But this is why I generally sit in the background. And actually Wendy is here. Let's see if we can pop Wendy back in. And if we can, then I shall hide.
Oh, sorry about that. Something just glitched in the internet highway and threw me out.
That's right. Same thing happened to me in the pre-meet, didn't it?
Did you say anything interesting? Did I miss anything?
There's a question saying that William Ryan has done the blurb for Sleeping Dogs. I'm just saying that we know Bill from him being a tutor on the course in the first year.
Yes, well, he was very kind. He has a novel which is not one of his historical series, which is what he's best known for, but he wrote a novel called House of Ghosts, which is a historical novel, and it does have ghosts in it. And
it's also
he was
his bestseller
writing
by a mile, isn't it? It's his biggest book by a long way.
I think, yeah, and he was just, I think he was just writing it when he was tutoring, sort of guest tutoring on our course, and he was the first one to get a read of my ghost bit, and he said, "Oh, that's interesting, because I'm doing a ghost story as well." And so we had a chat about ghosts, and he was, I mean, you know, he was part of the teaching cohort. He was really helpful and seemed to quite like it, and he left at the end of our. But he was there for a year because he was actually doing something else, and he just stepped in because Henry was on sabbatical, I believe. That's right. So Henry had a writing sabbatical. So Bill Ryan just came in to sort of do that year, and so when Sleeping Dogs was finished and was going to be published, I contacted him and said, "Would you like a copy to read?" And he said, "Oh, I would, because I haven't seen the finished article." So he very kindly had a copy and read it, and then said, "Would you know? Do you want to use this for the blurb? Because I really liked it." And I thought that was so kind, and it just goes to show how supportive I think the writing community is, because you get mentioned by people who, you know, you've come across and they've written something and you mention them because you thought it was really good, and the next thing you know somebody else has mentioned you, and it sort of cascades out, because we don't all like the same things, but we're all quite passionate about the things we like, so you know, it's lovely to hear about what people have enjoyed, and what they don't, not so much, but sometimes, you know, you think, well, that's not the book for me, so you go for something.
But that's a perfect thing to end on, because as Sam's saying, thank you, and the hour's nearly up, and the one thing that I did say right at the start that I would mention, which Bill Ryan being brought into it is perfect for, is there was a scene in an early version of Sleeping Dogs when Penny is sitting in a little bed sit, and she's working away on the case, and in a cage on the desk, completely irrelevant to the action, just there as a thing, like a lamp, it's a hamster cage, and there's a ghost hamster going around the wheel. And I just thought it was perfect. It just summed the book up so well. And Bill talked you into taking it out. So I'm going to have T-shirts printed with the hashtag "Bring Back the Ghost Hamster." And I want to see him or her in the future Penny Wiseman novel.
Well, actually, it really was funny, because Bill did persuade me to take it out because it served no useful purpose. And one of the things that I think is absolutely key when you're writing a novel is everything does have to serve a purpose, and you have to accept that, even though you keep things in because you like them and they're fun, and then you think, no, actually, it's got to go. And the ghost hamster had to go. But in the one I'm currently writing, and I can't really say too much, and it doesn't feature sort of majorly, but towards the end of that novel, there may be a glimpse of a ghost hamster that kind of leads into the third novel.
But it's perfect. It's a metaphor for Wendy. Yeah, she's not making progress.
My little wheels going round.
Exactly. Brilliant.
Thank you for that.
7:59.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Sorry if we didn't manage to answer any questions. I'm going to.
Have we answered all the questions? Oh, yes.
So I'm just going to show the book novels again in full size.
The mini ones.
There you go.
There we are. I'll hold mine up as well. And thank you very much for listening to us. And if you're listening to the recording, thank you very much for listening to the recording.
And thank you, Sam, for organising and hosting.
To Sam for organising and letting us come along and burble. Most kind, and look forward to, you know, lots more other authors burbling on the wonderful Facebook group. So enjoy.
Thank you, and have a great evening, everyone.